So let's talk about something that is frustrating a lot of parents, and it's kids not playing. And they'll say, well, you saw my kid in tryouts, you knew what they could do, why aren't they playing? And you're just trying to take money by having more kids on the bench. First off, these coaches ain't making money. Not for the amount of time. They're not making money. Second, the tryouts is a 2-hour time period that we are evaluating your kid for their potential for the season. 2 hours. I need you to think about the last time you had an interview for a job if you were hiring, and you hired this person, you're like, okay, they're going to be absolutely amazing. And then once they get to the job, you're like, well, actually, they aren't doing the skills the way we need. They don't have the pace that we need. They don't have the understanding of the job that we need. They just don't have it. It's the same thing, tryouts to interviews. You're seeing a glimpse of someone and seeing what can they do for the long term. And sometimes what you thought they can actually contribute, they need more development, which is why they're not playing. That's just how it goes. And so many times parents think it's something more nefarious than that. Coaches don't want to have kids on the bench just not playing. Like, they're not sitting there like, I'm going to be cruel and not play these kids. Like, that doesn't even come to our mind. So it's wild when people are like, coaches are just being cruel, not playing them. No, your kid at that point doesn't have the skill set needed to be on the court. Because what they saw in the tryouts is not what they're seeing in practice. Maybe your coach doesn't hear what they need to do and then do it. Maybe your kid isn't developing at the speed that needs to be happening. Maybe your kid, whenever they get on the court to play, just falls apart. All those things can be true. And it's not the nefarious coach who's like, I don't want to play the kids. Sit down and be quiet. Like, that's not happening. Coaches ain't got time for that. I think the next thing is then I see parents who are saying, well, just tell us our kid's role and we'll be cool. I am very direct. And when I'm direct about things, parents get really upset about the directness. So I want to push you on the idea that if we say your kid is just going to be a serving specialist right now and maybe go in, if you'll be okay with it. Sometimes you're not going to be, and then you're going to be upset about it. Well, I didn't pay all this money for my kid to be a serving specialist. I didn't pay all this money for my kid only to go in one time. So when coaches try and be honest with you, it gets pushed back in their face. So if you want them to be honest about roles, you have to take it. And I think the next thing is regarding roles, if you sit here and say, my kid isn't playing and they just sit at the end of the bench and you don't have a specific reason why they're not playing, maybe they're not getting their feet to the ball, their arm swing, they're not serving correctly, whatever it is, if you don't know why, because your kid hasn't asked, that's the thing between your kid and the coach. Your kid should never, ever, in the history of evers, sit on the bench and not have a detailed reason why they're not playing. And if then the excuse is, well, they just are uncomfortable talking to people in power, baby, they're going to have to get used to it. They're going to have to argue over a grade, a promotion, more money. Like, this is normal what they're going to do, and we have to teach them young. So if the excuse is, well, they're afraid, then they're going to be at the end of the bench afraid. We have to give them power and confidence to have the hard conversations and to be able to accept the results of it. If the coach is like, the reason you're not playing is because ABC, and they want to start crying, well, then the coach probably isn't going to tell them again. They have to be okay with asking questions why. And if the answer then is, well, the coach doesn't give us things, they just say, be ready, then your athlete needs to be able to push and say, I need to know specific things to work on. We have to give our athletes the power to then push on the coach to get more detailed understanding so that they can practice those things. But so many times I see parents who are like, my kid sits there at the end of the bench and doesn't do anything. And y'all don't know why? That's a problem. Y'all should know why. And lastly, regarding it, is that, like I said, with roles, we also can say, okay, your kid's going to come in and serve always in the second set. And then guess what? We're rolling. And we maybe don't get to them serving. Or what happens is that the person that they will usually come in for is doing really, really well, and we don't want to interrupt their rhythm, so your kid's not going to come in. And then you're sitting there mad, they told me my kid was going to come in at the end of set 2 and set or serve, and they're not, and I'm pissed off. The game tells us what's going to happen with some subs, especially ones that we're just trying to get in. And then you're mad because the coach was honest, and now you're pissed off because your athlete didn't go in when you think they should go in. Pick a battle. Your kid needs to lead this, which is what I've always said, and be the one to go ask the questions. And then from that point, it's what do we need to do to get better at that skill, knowing that your kid maybe isn't at the level they need to be at to compete on the court at that time. Because it's not just a kid going in there and serving once. No, it's about, can your kid play defense? Because your kid is not going to learn by just going and serving once and that's it. No. Is your kid serving? Are they playing defense well? Are they going and doing the second ball well? Like, those are all the things that should be going through your mind versus my kid's just not playing and they want money because they're cruel. Ain't no one got time for that, friends.